Yeah.
Listen, I went back to the hotel, but the thing that made me mad is they were so thirsty to take us down there. Like, come to this tomb, come to the tomb room. Come to the tomb
They were doing
room,
whippets?
right? You know, they were doing whippets was everywhere, all on the floor. The trash can was overfilling with them, like overflowing, falling out the trash can.
And whippets is, what is it, nitrous oxide? Yeah. So they were all fucked up on whippets.
Zombie looking like Dawn of the Dead. Trying to get me and my man J. Arch to come upstairs to smoke weed now. Like, we was like, nah.
There's dead slaves around there under the building?
Apparently.
Yeah,
got a tomb, they said.
You saw the tomb? Did
They
you see a tomb?
say that's where the so-called Skull and Bone fraternity used to have their meetings at in this so-called...
Could you imagine if we really found out that one of those really big Ivy League institutions had a room in the basement where you go in and there's a fucking tomb and they had slaves?
Listen,
That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying.
I know.
Let's not imagine it. Let's just say...
So I'm saying, what I'm saying is, I know you did see it, but what I'm saying is, could you imagine if that's real? And it is. Like, how... That doesn't even make sense.
That
Like,
is wild.
Skull and Bone stuff, when you really, like, talk to the people that
really think I would have
are
hit
experts
somebody.
on it, like, they form these bonds for life because of this creepy shit they do when they're young. Like, they do all this weird shit and dress up and have these little, like, have you ever seen, like, Bohemian Grove? You ever seen that shit? Yeah. Like, where they
man, the
they
type of people,
bundle of wood.
Bohemian
They
Grove.
should have seen how they would act.
Bohemian Grove is
a
much smaller
crazy.
part of a larger story. The story is of the fact that Solomon, even though he had 700 wives and 500 concubines, in the Bible when you read it, it says he grows.
Stop for a moment.
I'm just saying,
Solomon just running shit.
700 wives, 500 concubines. But the ill shit is, it discusses in the Bible about how in his old age he became complacent, and when he was an old man, he's too old to start fucking all these broads. They start running, parts of what is supposed to be his kingdom, and he allows them to have their own, to practice their own religions. And one of them was from the Ammonites. The Ammonites, one of his wives had a custom in which they would take this gigantic deity and they would fill holes and pockets within the deity with offerings to the god. And one of the last offerings was a human child, a newborn baby. And they had to put like wheat and an animal and a cornucopia or some shit and these special herbs. And then one of them was this. And according to people, that is what takes place at Bohemian Grove. A mock sacrifice of a human child honoring a god that people from...
Moloch, the owl god.
Moloch, whatever.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That whole
or he can be seen as a gigantic bull in some imagery. And where are these babies and people and the sacrifices coming from? Like, nobody knows about it?
Who are these parents that's letting people
Well, I
sacrifice
think
their child?
the idea is that they would steal it, and the idea is also that if you would be willing to kill a baby, you're showing like some really high level craziness that you're willing to engage in, so we can keep secrets with you. You're totally down for the cause. You're killing babies.
But
you're
going to the extreme. You're doing that in so many different societies. I remember when we talked about special Nazi training, I read an interesting story about how some of their officers in the SS, when they were trained, they were given a puppy for 6 months. And everyone knows, if they ever had a puppy that's a month or two old, in 6 months it looks really a lot bigger and different. And your job was to train the puppy, and it grew up with you. And if you failed and the puppy died, you were gone. It was like your responsibility was the dog. And on the day that you graduated, the last order that they were given was to take the dog out into the field and put a fucking bullet in its head. And they said they got this blueprint and idea from ancient Babylonian times when they had to choose gladiators to guard and be bodyguard for the king. They would give them a woman as they were gladiators. You can have this woman for a year. At the end of the year, your last and final order when you're training to be a bodyguard is to kill the woman.
Ooh.